uh, got to making this talk tape a number of years back because it's plain to see from what you did here on the other side, me trying to engage Grayce into conversation, that she was getting along pretty well advanced right then with Alzheimer's. And I think this, what you did here on the other side of getting her to talk, was possibly done, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So, and of course from then on, she has gotten progressively worse. So anyway, as to our marriage, after spending our wedding night at Ralph Malachi's house and everything, then it was apartment hunting. And the first place we settled for was the Tallhurst Apartments there in Payson. To the best of my knowledge, they're still standing there today. It was an upstairs apartment, small, and I guess the fee was reasonable because I wasn't making much money. Ralph had me on a guarantee of $25 a week, and things were getting a little bit tough. Made me wonder how much longer that he could continue to pay me that amount. But anyway, our life in the Tallhurst Apartments was happy. And the leading man in the operetta with Grayce, why, he saw to it that we were pretty well supplied with green groceries. I would awaken any morning and open the door, and I would find fresh tomatoes, maybe a watermelon, a cantaloupe, and such things as that out there on our doorstep. I think he was really infatuated with Grayce, and I can't blame him. She was a darn good-looking woman. But our marriage was happy, and we were happy up there. We had a lot of good entertainment. And as I recall, Thea and maybe some of her other friends, they gave her a little bridal shower, and we got a few gifts. So that's the way it was. As to this marriage, my mother had heard, I guess from some unknown source, that some widow had been chasing me, and I think she was highly concerned when she'd heard that I had been married, and I was so frightened of all of it, I guess. I feared to tell my parents that I was already married. But anyway, to condense this down, later on when Grayce and the family did come through Payson en route to Boulder City, why, they made a stop there. Needless to say, they were very much impressed with Grayce. So that made me feel good. We didn't stay in the Tallhurst Apartments too long, as I recall. Maybe we got a better rate at another place. I'm sorry I can't think of the name of this place. That was our next move, but it was a small apartment, and like I say, maybe the rent was some reduced. And I don't know, we always got along good. We didn't have any fights or anything like that. I think we understood each other, and we were in love, you know. We just kind of grew up together. Well, anyway, then there was another move after that, and darn it, I can't recall the name of the place. And it was probably the best apartment we'd had at any of the three. And we weren't there too long before the bottom fell out of the music business, and Ralph said to me, he said, I just can't afford to give you $25 anymore. And there's no way I could make it, you know, living with any less than that. Grayce had a friend, I can't think of her first name. Her husband was Scott. They had some little acreage down there somewhere, and I recall What the heck was her name? If Grayce was here, she could tell me, but I can't think of it. But he had a little acreage down there, and I went down there and gave him a hand harvesting some beans. And I think he paid me a few dollars for it. And I was always eager to make a buck where I could. But anyway, the bottom had kind of fallen out of things, and so I boarded the train for Grand Junction along with my dear little wife. I'd contacted the Highs, whom I'd played there before when I was in high school. I'd had a summer engagement there, and they welcomed me back. So back we went, and of course maybe Mrs. High kind of resented in a roundish sort of a way of me coming in with a good-looking young wife. I think she would have preferred that I would have been single, because there was maybe a couple of gals around there that might have had their eye on me. One I recall, her name was Doris Tarnahan, and I recall she had a little convertible, and she picked me up. Now, I think her husband was a judge or something there, I'm not sure. She picked me up now and then and took me places. So anyway, when we got there into Grand Junction, then it was house hunting for us. And we were very fortunate in getting a place that Gertie Stokes had. It was a triplex apartment. Gertie was a widow, and this was, if my memory serves me correct, up on Hill Street. And I think the address might have been 632. Well, anyway, Grayce was very personable, and it didn't take her long to meet all the three tenants that lived there. There was Dorla Knipe and her husband Jack, and they had a cute little girl. Her name was Dorla Dean. And then there was Pat Patchen, who ran the theaters. There was 2 theaters there in Grand Junction, and he managed both of them, and his wife took a liking to Grayce. So she was one that made acquaintances quite quick, and she adjusted quite well. And I guess maybe they kind of looked at us as just a couple of young kids, and they went all out to help us all they could by getting us free tickets to the shows and everything. Well, anyway, everything was going along pretty good there, and like I say, Grayce made acquaintances quite fast. And I recall we had a photograph taken in Grand Junction. We still have it. It sits in my house, and I think Barbara Jean and Diane each have a copy of myself and Grayce, individual photos taken there. I don't know how in the world I scraped up enough money to have them taken, but we did. And they turned out real good. Grayce was a good-looking woman, very good-looking, and I'm sure there's a lot of eyes cast her way. She didn't go out to the Garden City. Maybe she went out there a few times. This was a dime a dip, I beg your pardon, 10 cents a dance thing that I was playing for out there. And I think maybe Grayce felt within herself that if somebody wanted to dance with her and she didn't care to, that the Highs looked at it as an obligation for her to dance with whoever it was that asked her. So that didn't sit too well, and she didn't stay there too long, attend many dances out there. So anyway, and I recall Prince Brothers Market. We'd walk downtown there, and you could buy hamburger for 10 cents a pound. Everything was fairly cheap, and somehow we got by. The wages weren't much, and I don't think we were paying an over-exaggerated price for the rent. They treated us nice. And I recall Jack and his wife, Jack Knife, and his wife, they took us to their folks' home up in Palisade, where they raised a lot of fruit, peaches, and so forth. I recall they had a nice Pontiac sedan, and they took us around a little bit, and that was nice of them, to to give us a hand with the ride now and then in the car. They were just very special people. And maybe we might have played a few little simple card games with the families there. Pat Batchen's wife and Grayce and myself and some of the people that lived there in the triplex. There were just 3 families. So we enjoyed our life there. So with Grayce, like I say, at that time she was really alert and everything else, and as I've said before, very personable. She got along well with people, and didn't take her long to become acquainted. However, Grayce has always been one that spoke her own mind. But I mean, she had likes and dislikes. If she didn't particularly care for a particular person, why she wouldn't let it be known publicly or anything like that. But within herself, she felt kind of resentment towards that person. She didn't hold them in high esteem in any way. Were she only here, I'm sure she could tell a lot more than I could tell. But we had a good life in Grand Junction. We enjoyed it all. But the bottom started falling out of things there, and the Highs couldn't come up with the money to pay me. Supposedly it was a guarantee. So about that time, Boulder Dam had started down here, and my dad was here managing commissary. And him knowing that I was having it rough, he said, "Tom, if you come down, I can get you a job." So I talked it over with Grayce, and we decided that was the best thing to do, bail out of Grand Junction. I had a lot of fond memories of the Grand Junction. Met some good people there, but I recall after we checked out, got our tickets, and I think I had just about enough money to pay for our train fare to Provo. This was the DNR-GW Railroad that emanated out of Grand Junction, well, it ran right straight through from Denver, and I don't know where all it was. It was a big railroad. So we boarded the train. Jackknife took us and what little luggage we had to the depot, and it was a fond farewell to the families there in Grand Junction. We were aboard that train headed for Provo. Well, I'm going to stop this tape right here and maybe replay some of it. And like I say, I only wish Grayce could be on hand to tell some of the things that I'm trying to think of. Put me on a guarantee along with Johnny Haita, who played saxophone. You remember Johnny?
Yeah.
And he married Blanche Gillespie and George Shiner. And in fact, you can remember a lot of them that were in the band. But Ralph had put myself and Johnny Haida on a salary. But he couldn't make it because things were so tough. So the next thing that happened, you and I went to Grand Junction, Colorado.
Wait a minute, Johnny Haita, and he was married to who?
Blanche Gillespie, can't you remember?
Mm-hmm.
And so the next thing we knew, I'd previously played in Grand Junction while I was in high school over at Price. And so they accepted us, and we back to Grand Junction we went with supposedly a guarantee of $25 a week. Now, let's see what you can tell a little bit about Grand Junction.
Well, we drove around to try to find a place, and we found this nice place. Who were the people that we rented from?
Let's see. There was some of the people that were in the apartment were the Knights and the Patchins and
Patchen.
Yeah. And what was the lady's name that we rented from? I can't
think of her name either.
I can't think of it right now, but she was a real sweet person.
What was her name?
I'm trying to think of it, but I can't.
Do you think you will?
Yeah, and you can even remember the address, can't you? I can.
What was it? Humboldt, wasn't it?
No.
No, that wasn't Humboldt.
That was in Denver.
Yeah.
It was 632 Hill Street. Can you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So anyway, things
Do you
weren't...
think you'll ever remember who that was that owned the apartments?
Oh, I probably will someday, but it's not too important. But tell a little bit about some of the activity you have there in Grand Junction.
Well, we lived just the opposite to everybody else. When everybody else was in bed, we were out playing for dances, and then we'd come home and eat, and we just lived different. We slept in the day, and he played the music at night, and we cooked at night, and we shopped at night.
Well, how about the Knifes? They were very nice people. They had family up in Palisade, California. Palisade, Colorado there. A lot of fresh fruit and so forth raised up in that country. And then a number of times they'd take us with them on a drive, so forth. And we felt like we were kind of part of all the family. And tell a little bit about Patchins, her taking you to the movie for free. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Let's hear a little bit about that.
Well, she
And
took
about
me
the little dog that she had.
because her husband was the manager.
Yes. There was 2 theaters in Grand Junction, Colorado at that time, and he was the manager of both of them. Pat Patchen. And they had a little dog. Can you remember the little dog's name?
No, can you?
Yeah, sure I can. He was a little Chinese dog of some nature, like Shih Tzu or something. And Chinky.
Yeah, Chinky.
Yeah, that's what they called him. Well, anyway, things were kind of tough there in Grand Junction. You went out to the place where I played a number of times. It was a jitney dance, and supposedly the floor paid $60 an hour when it was full. But people were so darn poor they couldn't hardly afford to dance.
Oh, couldn't you remember the lady that owned it had a son there?
Now, no, I don't think I do. Now, let's see. Let's stop this here, take for a minute and see what we're talking about.
Tommy just thought, with his good mind, who the lady was that owned it, and her name was Gertie Stokes.
She was a delightful person.
Or was it Gertie Stokes?
Yeah, that was her name.
Stokes.
Stokes.
Uh-huh.
And she was a delightful person.
Well, and we slept when everybody else was up doing things, going out shopping and having fun and everything. We were sleeping because we were up ranting around all night, and Tommy playing the band. And
but anyway, it was a struggle, wasn't it, to make ends meet on what little money we made.
We didn't have a car then, did we?
No way did we have a car. We didn't have nothing. And as you may recall, then I was starting to have a problem as to the wages. They weren't coming through with the wages they promised, right?
So we went back to Utah.
So right about then, my dad was down in Boulder City. You remember that? Mm-hmm. And he said, well, if you can come on down here, I can get you a job. So the next thing we knew,
we were in Boulder City.
The Knifes took us on to the depot at Denver and Rio Grande.
Let's see.
Denver and Rio Grande took us right through to Provo. And I don't recall who might have picked us up at Provo and took us to Payson. Might have been Dick or somebody, right? Huh?
Knifes took us to I think it was Dick, wasn't it?
Yeah, so then we went
Knifes took us to the depot.
In Grand Junction. We've already got that on the tape, so you don't need to talk about that anymore.
No, but I think that Dick did. There wouldn't be anybody else that would come.
Yeah, somebody had to come to Provo and pick us up.
And it was Dick, I think.
I think it had to be. So anyway, then, as you may recall, we were so darn poor that I talked to my mother, and she sent me $10, a bus fare, to go to Las Vegas. And my mother said, make sure your dad sends that back to me because I need that money. Okay.
He picked us up at where? Provo?
Yeah, we've talked about that already.
All right, that's where
yes,
we
that's That's where Dick picked us up at Provo and took us to Payson. Now let's go on with it. So I came on to Boulder City, and I was picked up and brought out I was picked up in Las Vegas by Millie Cortor, brought out to Boulder City, and I met my dad, and I went to work. Fortunately, I had a job, and how thankful I was. Now you take over here. Let's hear a little bit. You say something. Instead, this is your
Well,
turn.
when I came down here, I got all dressed up. I was thin, and I had this beautiful black shellac hat with a flower on it, and I was thin. I had the black dress and the white flowers. So when I went to get on the bus, this driver said to me, he said there was quite a few people, women and men on the bus, and some older than that. He said, come over and sort of whispered to me. He said, you come and sit by me in the front. So I said, why? He said, no cause, just come on over and sit. So he did, and he talked to me and that. Well, when we got down to Beaver, they had to do some things with the bus. There was something they had to do. They had to stop for something. And then the bus tipped over on one side and come back over the other one. And I had to crawl out like through the top to the side I was on. And I had this black shellac hat and a black dress with white flowers on it. And lace stockings, and my knees were all cut to pieces and blood running down. And my hat was ruined, the flowers cut off and everything. And we had to wait up there 6 hours before a bus came out of Las Vegas to pick us up.
Okay, that was that. And now, after you got in Las Vegas, can you remember somebody picked you up and brought you to Boulder City?
Yeah, it was Millie Cortor.
All right. And then, by that time...
And later, her name's Bogardus, but she was a chiropractor.
Yes. But now you recall, my dad was granted one of the 6 company houses that they had built on 607D. You remember that?
Uh-huh.
All right. And we had the privilege of moving in there, right?
Yes, but there was not that much room, and we had to we had to sleep out on the porch.
Well, now,
it was enclosed, but that's where we slept.
Yeah, let's talk about it first. When we moved in there, my mother and the family had not come down yet, right?
That's right.
Okay. So that was really something. We had to take a scoop shovel and remove the sand off the porch. That's how bad Boulder was. And then what did you say after you got to Boulder? You asked me how long are we going to stay here.
I
Go
said,
ahead.
how long? I was crying, and I said, how long are we going to have to stay in this dump?
Yeah, and what did I tell you? I said about 6 months till we get a stake, and then we'll go.
Get out.
Okay, that was some of our early life right there. So after the folks come down, why then there was just a little bit too many people in one house, and we went house hunting. All right, now let's see if you can tell me where we went after that. We made 2 or 3 moves, and the first one was where? You can't remember, huh? Walter Bierce?
Yeah, Walter Bierce, and that was on Wyoming.
That's right. So that was just a little bitty old station place, and we cooked. We shared the bathroom with them and shared the stove to cook the breakfast and what have you, right? And there was a feud going on between that husband and wife, and we didn't stay there very too long, right? You remember that? Huh?
I remember that.
Well, you better start remembering a little something.
What were they feuding about?
Well, I don't know. I guess they weren't very happily married. They were fighters.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we moved from there to Red Wilson. Can you remember that? We lived on the screen porch. You don't need to write these things down. I want you to talk them.
Okay.
Can you remember that?
We went where?
To Red Wilson's house. And we
Yeah.
lived on a screen porch. It was canvassed in. Right? Okay, now this is your show. It's not mine. You tell a little bit about it. What you did there. You shared a refrigerator?
I had to share a refrigerator. Was that down?
was down way on 7th Street, down in an area here somewhere.
Way down there.
Yeah,
Well, Red Wilson's small house, it was a 6-company house.
that's right. They were all 6-company houses.
And it was a small one, and we rented the porch.
That's right.
And then we used their stove.
Oh, they had a small stove out there, a little kerosene stove
Yeah.
that we had. We had a shelf on the refrigerator. They were nice people. They treated us good, right? Now at that time, let's bear in mind too that I was working 7 days a week and making $4 a day, right? And you were still able to save a little money, weren't you? Let's hear about it, what you did with postal savings and so forth.
Well, I'd get the money that we had, and then I'd count it out, and then I'd just say, we're going to go out and get some postal savings. Is that what they were called?
Yeah, postal savings. We didn't
And
have
that's
any
a-
banks or nothing then.
So that's the way we started out saving our money.
Yeah, that's where we made our start.
And we didn't have a car.
No, we
We
had
had to
nothing.
walk.
Okay, then along about time while we're still in Red Wilson's, you were very much pregnant, right? You remember that?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I said to you, upon going out one night,
But was that Red Wilson's down there, or was that the Red Wilson up on...
the Red Wilson down here
up on
first,
the hill?
and I said to you that you were pretty well silhouetted as to your pregnant condition, being able to see through the screen porch, with the canvas around it. So anyway, as you got a little further along, it was meant that the baby couldn't be born in Boulder City. So what did we do then? You go ahead. Let's hear what you did. Where'd you go?
Well, then I went up to my mother's place in Ogden,
That's right.
and the baby was born Barbara Jean was born in Brigham City, Utah. And we stayed over with Tommy's mother, or grandmother, was it? Who was it? We went over there in Brigham City.
That was both my grandmothers we had met in Brigham City. Now, let's get back to that a little bit. You mentioned Barbara Jean was born, yes, in Brigham City. And the doctor was kind of elated that we would come up there to him, and he gave us a special price,
What was his name?
Dr. Cooley. And the price, the general price for a baby delivery at that time was $50, and he made a concession, and he charged us $35. Can you remember that?
And the nurses,
Yeah, tell a
something
little bit
would go
about the
down.
nurses.
They would go down and buy something for me to eat, a special treat or
That's
something.
right. And Barbara Jean was the only girl in the hospital.
And they made a
There
big
was number of-
fuss over.
And they really made a big fuss over her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that you remember well about.
I'm just putting nurses clamored.
Well, you see, Grayce is not doing you any. You're talking this tape, so you don't need to write anything down. You're talking. So after your 10 days in the hospital, then we went to Ogden, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you lived with your mother and Edsel there in Ogden. They had an apartment up on, my memory serves me correct, it was up on about 25th Street. And so we stayed there for a while, and then it was up to me to get back to the dam because I wasn't even sure I had a job. And I did go back, and fortunately, my job was safe, and I was able to go back to work. Okay, so you stayed in Ogden for quite a little while till you felt you were able to travel. And do you recall how you might have got to Boulder City with the baby? Let's hear a little bit about what you remember.
Well, how did I come on the bus?
It's possible that you did. I don't quite recall. But anyway,
I had one of those cribs, those little baskets, don't you
Yeah.
remember?
but
Or
anyway,
did you come up and get me?
no, I didn't come up and get you because I didn't even have a car. And
Well, how
we
did
had-
I get down here then?
Well, you.
Oh, Edsel brought me.
All right, Edsel may have brought you. Okay. So, the first, after you come with the new baby, then we moved into Red Wilson's house. He had that on Avenue L. And it was a basement apartment, right? It wasn't a six company house, but at that time there was a few other homes that had been built.
Wasn't that on Avenue L?
Yes. And can you remember the Glazers that lived there?
We had a basement apartment.
Grayce, it's not doing you any good to write this down now. What I want you to do is talk it.
Well, I will, but I want something to know for myself. Red Wilson's house, we had the basement apartment.
That's right. And the Glazers were our neighbor. We shared the bath with them. And they were very, very fine people. They,
What was their first name?
his name was Chick Glazer. And they have a daughter that we run into now and then that lives in Las Vegas by the name of Beverly Glazer. But anyway, we stayed there for a certain length of time, right?
Anne Glazer, wasn't that
I believe it was. And Barbara Jean had the colic like crazy. Can you remember that? Huh?
Yeah.
So everybody had a formula, but didn't seem like anything worked. Okay. Then the next move from there was where? After we left there.
After we left Glazers?
Yeah.